Hello, and welcome to Locutors of Trek, the podcast where we talk about the people, places, and things of Star Trek. So, replicate yourself a Romulan ale or your Syntha selection of choice and join us far beyond the stars.
Locutors of Trek.
Program initiated. Enter when ready.
Jolon True, it's me, Davan,
And me, Dave.
also known as Plain Simple Tailors, and
Locutors of Trek.
Thank you for finishing that sentence for me, Dave.
You're welcome. I like to jump right in there.
Today's theme is justice.
Now, justice is an abiding concern for the human species. The eminent ancient philosopher Plato, or as some in the ancient world called him, the divine Plato, defined justice this way. He said it was to tacheo tu praten, to do the things that pertain to oneself. He was talking about it in terms of an ordered society where people took on specific roles in which they could best flourish. Now, in some ways, that sounds a little bit like the Federation to me. People go into the directions and don't have any economic reason to not pursue their interests and their gifts and develop themselves in the directions they choose. So there's a certain consistency there from that very ancient foundation out to at least some of the Federation's, or at least the human contribution to the Federation's values. But justice, like beauty, can often be in the eye of the beholder. So today we're going to make our way to court in various types of places and think about what is just in the infinite diversity of the Trek world.
But first, why don't we explore the idea of our dream crew
Ooh, how can I do justice to this?
on perhaps dream concept vessel or
Okay,
what have you?
right on. Okay, so we've got a few positions to fill here. We'd have to set ourselves up at least a general bridge crew plus a couple of the other staff that would normally be coming through there. So that means a captain, first officer, science officer, tactical, security, engineering, a doctor, ops, con, and a counselor.
We'll
Where
leave
do we
off
start?
comm officer because there's only two to choose from, and the position itself has been absorbed into
Into
ops,
other bridge roles.
tactical.
Yeah. So we're really doing a sort of a more 24th century oriented bridge crew here.
Yeah.
Or at least what if.
Yeah. This is like a what if in a way. What if you and I?
Could staff our own starships.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I suppose in that case I would have made a different choice for captain and I would have made it Captain Me. But barring me as the
existing
captain.
characters only.
Yeah.
No Captain Dave, even though I'd watch that.
See? Paging CBS and Paramount. Captain Dave, Star Trek's newest offering in the fall of 2021.
So, which captain did you choose?
This is going to be a huge surprise. Picard. You?
I can't say I'm surprised.
Is my surprise going to be any greater with your choice?
Jellicoe. No, just kidding. I'm just kidding. I actually mean, that Bolian guy.
Oh, yeah, the Bolian guy. He's great.
The Bolian
Very
guy.
captainly.
I choose him.
Good old Captain Riggs.
No. Of course, it's Benjamin Sisko. I'm kind of approaching this as what's the show I want to see.
Okay.
I could watch a TV show with the characters I want, just to see the different dynamics.
Sure.
Ben Sisko.
Ben Sisko. All right. Lovely. Now, first officer.
My first officer is Raffi.
Nice.
I think she would work well with Sisko for one thing, because he's sort of the tactical guy, ponder the philosophy and repercussions of all his decisions. He's not the kind of guy to go out and find the information and things like that, whereas Raffi has shown that she's just magnificent at that.
Yeah, that's true.
And has a compulsion to do it.
Sure.
Where Picard, just calls her just like, so I know you're researching the thing. Carry on.
Carry on.
So I would just really love to see those two act together, actually. It would just be a really great
That'd be really
dynamic, I
interesting.
think.
For me, first officer, that's a position that's got to take the whole ship, including the captain, in hand, in a certain way, right? Or at least have them in view all the time. And so it requires a good head on your shoulders. Mm-hmm. And the person I'm picking has had two good heads on his shoulders. It's Data.
Data, the first officer.
Yeah.
Picard Data, it's the way it always should have been.
Picard Data would work very well, I think.
They never got the chance.
No, it's true. It's true. But yeah, I think Data would be an excellent first officer.
I don't know where you're putting them, but they make all kinds of sense leading the flagship of the Federation. I don't know where you're going to put them. We'll save that for the end. But unless we're talking, later years Picard, who nobody in the Federation likes.
That's true. Yeah.
Security officer.
Security officer. Okay, now this is not tactical. This is security.
Oh,
right?
wait. Did I say security officer? Science officer.
Science. Oh.
Science.
Not the sweet science. Just science.
Just science.
For me, this is, again, well-rounded crew member who has tons of experience. Jadzia Dax.
Mine as well.
I mean, honestly, for me, it was a toss-up between Jadzia Dax and Spock.
Me too, actually.
Spock would have been a wonderful addition to any crew in the modern Trek era. And he's the one character that can really transition that way,
I'll explain later why I ended up with Jadzia over Spock, but I was having the same.
Sure. Well, that's pretty much all I was going to say about Jadzia. If you want to.
Well, no, it's like you said, several lifetimes. She brings. I mean, except in certain moments, Sisko and Raffi, they're a serious pair. Jadzia lightens things up a little, and through her lifetimes of experience, she's confident enough to do so.
Yeah.
And I think that bridge and even the wider environment could use Jadzia. And a good science officer.
I can see that. Sure. How about tactical?
Tactical. I chose just because I wanted her on the bridge somewhere. And this is the position that makes the most sense, I guess. Mariner.
Oh, right on.
I wanted her on the bridge somewhere. I couldn't have her at ops because you can't have her coordinating things.
Oh my God.
And I mean, she can do everything. She's a good science officer. I even considered her for first officer, but she's just not.
It would be a disaster.
Sisko wouldn't have that. But yeah, so have her at tactical. She's good at that.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
When you need a tactical plan in the heat of the moment, Mariner's the one that has it. So
yeah,
she's perfect for the role.
She's good at stepping into those sort of crisis moments, for sure.
And I want to see her and Jadzia hang out.
They talk to all the guys that you can see their brains.
Yes, they would. They know the same transparent skull guys.
See?
Yeah.
Baudet and his friend Today.
Yeah.
We'll see him today. Anyway, so for me, a tactical, because we just did not see enough of her, Tasha Yar.
Wow.
I really loved that character. Mm-hmm. It's really unfortunate that
crazy backstory that never really got
the
developed
crazy backstory was pretty difficult, but yeah, she was just really well characterized and an interesting friendship with Data as well, which I found really great on screen. Not just the sort of Naked Now episode, but the ways in which they become friends after that moment as well is pretty beautiful.
And the trinket he keeps of her with the holograph.
Yeah.
It's very, very sweet. They bring that up in The Measure of a Man, I believe.
Absolutely they do. Mm-hmm. Yep. Ops. For me, I would, because I like to see him on the bridge or at the sort of ops area, I would put O'Brien at ops.
Oh, wow. O'Brien at ops.
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, you'd have to convince him to do it.
That's true. I'll bet you Picard
Which would be a
or
fun
Sisko
part of the
could
story. Fun part of the story. How do you get him away from engineering?
Well, I really enjoyed a lot of those scenes that he had on the Defiant, where he could partake in some of the bridge discussion in a different way, even than he does in Ops on DS9, right?
Sure, they start doing the charge of the Light Brigade.
Oh, yeah. Just beautiful, right?
Yeah.
You really see O'Brien, the soldier, coming out again there, even while he's leaning more heavily all the time into his engineering, I would put O'Brien at Ops.
For me, because I don't want to rob him of his promotion, Worf, he's an ops guy now. He's a strategic operations officer on Deep Space Nine, right?
Sure.
Or not now, I should say. Who knows what he's doing in Picard time.
Ops.
Worf's good at ops. You don't want Worf at tactical. It feeds into
He actually spent a decent time at ops before he took over tactical. That's true.
Yeah.
He was there quite frequently.
Yeah, Worf, and I love Worf. I want him on the bridge.
Fair enough.
I love him and Sisko together. Mm-hmm. In fact, that Worf's kind of a little intimidated by Sisko, and Sisko finds that hilarious.
That's true. Well, if we're already at ops, what about Khan?
Khan might be an obvious choice. I don't know. I picked old Tom Paris. I do enjoy Tom Paris. I like his nostalgia, and he just adds different kind of interests and things to the environment, to the crew.
I hear
You
you.
know, not just interested in his job and Starfleet things. He's just like, hey, let's watch a movie, or let's
Yeah, that's true.
He's an interesting character. Don't get to see him except in the first episode at Deep Space Nine, just in regular places, not in the Delta Quadrant stranded.
That's true.
Plus, he's a hell of a pilot.
That's true. Well, my pick for Khan is also a hell of a pilot. Has a silky smooth voice. Good old
Oh my.
suit. Oh my. That's right.
Oh my.
Iharu Sulu.
Yeah, can't go wrong.
Indeed.
Swashbuckler.
Great sword fighter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of my favorite scenes is him from Undiscovered Country. Fly her apart then!
Oh, yes.
Love it. One of my favorite scenes in the whole franchise. Fly her apart, sir. Fly her apart then. And he's just looking at that guy like, you better fly her apart, sir. I'm coming over there right now. Like, holy crap.
He's a great captain.
Oh, yeah, he is. And it's what he always wanted. He's just like, I want the next big ship. I want the next better than Enterprise. I want the big thing. And I want to captain it. And he got it. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be interesting. That would be an interesting character just to see more of. Just have a whole Sulu series would be great.
Okay. Engineering.
Oh,
I know we don't have the same one here because I kept O'Brien there where he wants to be. He's
Aha.
gonna be my engineer. He can keep everything together, working good.
well, I have LaForge.
But he's a man of the people. His crew loves him.
He's a Union man.
He's a hero like Sean O'Brien.
That's right.
37 bullets they found him.
He was a Union man.
Hero. A Union man. Better than a hero, a Union man.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, I would have put LaForge in engineering. I love watching LaForge work.
It was between O'Brien and him for me, and I just went with the chief because I just love. There's a bit more humor to him than LaForge.
That's true. Yeah.
Not that it's all about the humor. Geordi keeps things running good.
Oh, he's very
Just keep him out of the holodeck.
ship-shape and businesslike. Oh, yeah. Oh, so now I think we've got only a couple of positions left here. We've got security chief.
Doctor and counselor.
Doctor and counselor. Yeah.
Well, how about your doctor?
My doctor is a character I don't think really gets enough love because, honestly, he was involved in one of the worst episodes of Star Trek ever. Phlox.
Oh, Phlox. What's the worst episode you're talking about?
When
He's mine as well, by the way.
The
I
dog
love
gets
Phlox.
sick, and Archer spends the night in sick bay, and there's all like the tongues. Like, it's all kind of gross. I thought it was hilarious.
I like
but
that
it gets a
episode,
lot of...
Does it?
It
A
gets a
Night in
lot
Sick
of
Bay.
flack, that episode does.
When he's pretending to be the Falcon to like scare the...
He's like chasing the bat around.
Oh my God.
I loved that
I love that episode. But I love everything with Phlox. I just love Phlox.
Yeah, I think he's
that
he's
big
marvelous.
Smile he can do from like...
Oh, yeah. And his openness
Yeah.
to the whole of the world is just
Everything,
absolutely delicious. Oh, well, this will be interesting. You know,
It's like, doesn't
he's
it bother
game.
you being
He's
away
very-
from all your people and being stuck with, a different culture of humans and stuff? And you know how they are. They're a bit underdeveloped. And like, he's just like at first, but I got used to it. And now I quite enjoy the company of my human colleagues. Like, he just sees the bright side of everything. Like,
He really does. Oh,
but he's great. Man.
actually, he's got
The
one of the
actor's
best
great, too.
episodes
I
of
do love the
Enterprise
actor
too,
as well.
when he's writing to the other doctor.
Sure,
That's a
Doctor
great
Who comes
episode.
into the series later as well in
Yeah.
a horrific fashion.
Oh yeah, that's true. Now, how about your security chief?
Oh, here's why I didn't pick Spock. I already had a Vulcan, and they're all kind of similar in a sense. So you really only need one on your cast, and it's Tuvok because I love Tuvok. And
Did I just hear you say that all Vulcans are the same to you?
No, is that what I said? I said I meant to say they're the same, similar type of character where they're just like the.
You're canceled from Vulcan.
Oh my God.
No IDIC for you.
We'll just have to not air this episode at all.
Oh my gosh, this has been removed for harmful Vulcan.
But I think there's a reason we've never seen more than one Vulcan on the main cast of a crew, because they all have the same position usually.
Yes.
At least,
Yes. And I mean, the role they've kind of developed in Star Trek is being a kind of foil for the more emotional humans
Yeah,
as well.
exactly. And you don't really need two of those. I mean, they sort of did with Tuvok and Seven,
A little bit, yeah.
and that was fine.
But Tuvok's he's a great character.
But I love Tuvok.
Yeah.
He's funny, and he knows he's being funny, but he's pretending like he doesn't know he's being funny, and it's this whole... it's like, you always have to have the last word, don't you? No, I don't.
His conversations with Neelix are particularly delicious.
They're good, yeah.
Oh, man. Mr. Vulcan?
Mr. Vulcan?
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Neelix. Great Calto player.
True. True. Yeah. And a great meditation teacher.
True.
Helps keep the crew calm.
Yeah, he took care of Suitor.
Yeah, that's true. It's another interesting
Big
character.
change with Suitor. Like,
Yeah.
Suitor, what a great character Suitor was. We'll have to do
Suitor's
a little
arc is really
side
interesting.
talk on him. Yeah,
Yeah.
great arc. Your security.
My security officer is like the long shot of this whole crew. It's Odo.
Odo, I thought about Odo.
I would love to have Odo come back and just hang out on a Starfleet ship. I can't imagine him ever doing it, which is the problem.
No,
so
that's why I'd cut him.
Like,
I
the
had
problem
him on
is
there.
how you would write him onto the ship.
But then I ended up cheating anyway. I was like, he's not Starfleet, I'll keep him off the list. But as you'll see with our next one.
This is Counselor?
Yes, Counselor. But yeah, Odo'd be good. He's
Yeah, Odo'd be great.
great actor, good character. Mm-hmm. My Counselor,
Uh-huh.
not in Starfleet,
Oh,
nor would ever be in Starfleet.
who is it?
But if you need somebody to soothe your weary soul or your weary bones, the person best equipped to meet those needs is obviously Quark.
Oh.
Not a counselor per se, but one of my favorite quotes from the Menagerie, or therefore the Cage, in their TOS, is the doctor in that. He's giving Pike a drink, and he's just like, what are you, my bartender now? Because he's the doctor, and he's just like, nope, but we get the same type of clients, people who are living and people who are dying.
Yeah.
So they're not so different, a counselor and a good bartender, and Quark takes it very seriously.
You can see him doing that
That's why
kind of
he,
things with people sometimes. right?
begrudges Warfella. He's like, he doesn't really share much with his bartender.
Yeah. You get to spend some useful Ferengi advice. Keep humans from eternal destitution.
Which is important.
Yeah. Now, my counselor is again not in Starfleet. I really love Counselor Troy as a character.
Me too. I almost put her on there, too.
And her appearance in the Nepenthe episode of the first season of Picard was just amazing. Such a
good.
beautiful episode and a script, and she played it so beautifully. Marina Sirtis, man.
Mm-hmm. A+.
Yeah. My counselor is Guinan. Different kind of bartender, different kind of
Goes
alien.
perfect with your Picard captain.
Yeah.
That's his guidance, his guiding light a bit.
Yeah. But I mean, I think, in the number of effective human lifetimes she's lived, she's just garnered a lot of wisdom.
Oh, for
And
sure.
she's good at listening.
She's read the rules of acquisition.
Oh, I'm sure she's read the rules of acquisition at some point. I think Guinan would be my counselor. Now, what are your people the crew of?
Well, I think this crew, except for maybe Tom Paris, but no, he would enjoy it too as well. The first Federation space station in the Gamma Quadrant.
Ooh.
Not a DS9 Terok Nor style, because that's Cardassian, but the first Federation. That's why they have Ben. Ben's back from beyond. And then they need someone to,
man.
be familiar with and handle the Gamma Quadrant, and
That's
two, know
true.
how to be familiar with and handle a station. He's the
He
perfect
is
guy
of
for this
Bajor.
thing. And he is of Bajor.
Yeah.
Quark keeps Raffi, Jadzia, and Tom Paris and Mariner entertained. So I had that crazy bunch. Cause
I gotcha.
Well, at least they're not going to go stir crazy, because Quark can get them what they need. And that's why I had to have Tuvok in there, because my crew was getting a bit ridiculous. Like, even Phlox is a bit ridiculous, and O'Brien, like, they're all a bit ridiculous. So I needed a Vulcan in there to just keep the place from falling apart.
Right. I gotcha.
Tom's got nothing to fly. That's my thing about Tom Paris. So
That's true.
So he's there, how
He'll
just
build
drive
himself
and
something to
fucking-
fly.
Yeah,
That guy
he's
gets
got the Delta Flyer.
pretty handy.
They call it the Gamma Flyer.
Yeah, that's true. He could build himself a Gamma Flyer.
Gamma Flyer. Oh, I
This
like
one
this
looks like
idea
a
even more.
minivan, Tom.
CBS. I mean, you can take this idea
Yeah.
too.
Now, I think my crew here is the crew of a ship that answers a question Picard once asked. Do you remember when we used to be explorers?
Yeah. Oh wow, a nice exploratory vessel.
So I think what these guys would be on would be Now, the ship I'm drawing this from is actually, I saw it show up from Star Trek Online. So this is not my own thing, but it is now here comes the part that's not just bright. It's a refit or a redesign of the New Orleans class as an explorer light cruiser called the Lafayette class.
No way.
It is, yes, way.
Wow.
They've got more sovereign style lines, but they essentially keep that configuration with the 2 dorsal and the 1 ventral pods that the New Orleans class had. But of course, that it would
Equipped
be
for
updated
long
with
range,
the kinds of
not
exactly.
returning.
So you could put a
port
bunch of
for
sensor pods
a
up
decade.
there and all sorts of stuff, right? And just head away on a 5-year mission.
Wow. Which direction do they go?
Oh, first start of the left and straight on till morning, man. I would love to see them head further out toward the edge of the galaxy, but there'd also be something really interesting in heading straight for the core, which would be one of the shorter routes. Pardon me?
Civilizations would probably be older.
I would
When you
imagine
head inward.
in that galactic core, because the stars are going to be older,
Yeah.
right? I imagine. I may be totally
And-
wrong about that, but
Things get more dense. As you
Sure.
go. It'd just be civilization upon civilization. They wouldn't have to get far to get there. You're not in one.
Yeah.
You're not in one species territory for very long before you're in the next.
no, it's true. And we really, when you look at the galaxy we're in, we really are on sort of the
Oh yeah.
outer third
Outer arm.
of the galaxy. There's an awful lot of directions they could go that would be pretty amazing. They could send an exploratory ship back through to the Delta Quadrant, or start exploring what used to be Romulan space, because I don't think the Romulans are governing much of
That would
anything
be
at this
interesting,
point.
actually. Tomalak might pop up.
Yeah?
Oh, he can't. The actor's departed.
Well, yes, R.I.P. Ardras Kasulis, but
Um,
maybe Tomalak's son,
Tomalak's son, Ramalak,
Babalak.
Babalak.
Okay, we're bad at naming Romulans.
I thought mine was realistic.
Mine was bad.
I assume a return to more episodic storytelling,
That's probably best.
more one-off stories in yours.
I would like that. Yeah. I mean, for me, that my preference would be a kind of hybrid. Where you can develop
Like
some...
Deep Space Nine, originally.
Yeah, very much like the first few seasons of Deep Space
That would
Nine.
be my model as well with this station.
Yeah, so you can draw out character arcs. You can establish some things, because if they're exploring several sectors or doing that sort of stuff, they may get involved with groups of people that they're going to meet many times, like Voyager meeting the Kazon repeatedly, right? Or others, the Herodian or whatever it is. Yeah, I would love to do one of those sort of more like straight out exploring things. It's one of the things I'm looking forward to seeing in what's it going to be called? Strange New Worlds. I'm excited to see that.
Me too. I'm excited for that. So, Justice.
Justice.
Just about every series, I think, has some episodes that tackle some form of justice, whether it be Starfleet justice, or Klingon justice, or Cardassian justice. We see a lot of different interpretations of what justice can mean.
Sure.
And in a lot of cases, they get into it pretty deep in certain Star Trek episodes, and they really try to explore these alien forms of systems of justice.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there are even moments where appeals are made to a form of natural or sort of intuitive justice, where they're beyond the bounds of any traditional sense of sort of a legal or even a moral or ethical framework that would be shared.
I think the first time we see something like a trial in Star Trek is in TOS, and that would be the menagerie.
Menagerie, sure.
It's just a way to sneak the footage they had from the cage in there, but they made it as a trial against Spock.
Sure.
And he's not talking. This is the one with Pike.
Yes.
In the
Famously disfigured Pike.
yes, in the little box machine,
Yes.
which we see again in Lower Decks. I love Lower Decks.
Yeah, and this is an interesting episode in that it's one of the first to flesh out a concept of Starfleet justice And
Yeah.
it resembles very strongly military or naval tribunals. In fact, I think there's in the episode Measure of a Man, the lawyer who's going to be arbitrating the dispute is in fact called a JAG officer,
Yeah.
which is an
Judge
American
General,
military
yeah.
term. Yeah, and it's an interesting episode in that it attempts to find a suitable recompense for this figure of Pike, for whom Spike has, or
Spock.
Spock, for whom Spike, her Spock
Wrong show.
has. Oh, right, I forgot all about that. Yeah, totally wrong. Yeah. Anyway, he's really gone beyond Starfleet's capacity to tolerate his acts in respect of Captain Pike, or out of respect for Captain Pike, perhaps. Duty. Duty, of course, is a big theme in Starfleet ethics and morals.
Yes, they take very seriously doing their duty, and they take it very seriously when somebody doesn't do their duty.
Yes, yes. I
know,
love the way that Sisko refers to it as the uniform.
The uniform, I like that.
I
as
think
well.
it sums up duty, it sums up sort of respect, or all sorts of things that are supposed
And
to
I think
be
it
in
reflects the kind of nuanced difference between like the way Picard sees it and the way he sees it. Whereas Picard always says Starfleet, or the Federation sometimes, but Starfleet, because to him that's what he idealizes. He sees Starfleet as this great grand thing, and it's what he tries to be and wants everyone to be, and like that's his top of the pyramid.
Sure.
Whereas
Sure.
Sisko, to him, it's more about the individuals and the people a little bit. So to him, it's the
It's
people
the
in
uniform.
the uniform.
Sure.
Where he's not as rah-rah Starfleet, for example.
No, it's
it's
true.
not his top ideal. And I mean, it very much it is. That's what he means to a degree when he says the uniform. But to him, it's just, he really admires the people who choose to wear it. And taking that oath to Starfleet, like when he yells at,
Oh, at Eddington. Oh, yeah.
no, well, Eddington, but also I was thinking Cal Hudson.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Yeah,
Well-
you really see what he means by that. And he brings him a uniform, doesn't he?
Yeah, he brings it.
Yeah.
He's like, it's not too late, put it back on. And Cal says, no, it's too late for that.
Yeah.
But to him, that's all it would take. Put the uniform back on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it makes all the more poignant that beautiful sort of staging where during his monologue he removes the progressive layers of his uniform in... Oh, now I've lost the name of the episode. You know it.
In the pale
In the
moonlight.
pale moonlight.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
That's-
as he progressively takes off the layers of Starfleet and is just sort of left
and
as...
losing pieces of himself. He's
Exactly.
losing pieces of himself who he thought he was.
Absolutely.
So good.
Yeah, and he has to set them aside because he can't be those right now. It's a beautiful piece of work.
And, we see, to a degree, the punishments that Starfleet lay down. Eddington, he seemed to be sent to a not-so-nice prison, kind of something more we'd see as a prison today, where, he sort of was just stuck in a cage, as opposed to, like, Tom Paris, who gets to go to a resort prison.
Yeah, he's got
for
very
his
much a minimum
transgressions.
security sort of a place in terms of contemporary justice notions.
And then we saw what happened to Burnham, where she was treated... Well, we didn't really see where she was going, but she was, in cuffs and stuff, so they were treating her as a dangerous criminal anyway.
Yeah, and it's a pretty miserable planet they're on when they're leaving, isn't it?
Yeah, I think
Already.
so. Or they're heading to a miserable one, and that's
Yeah.
what they're warning her about, I think.
And Discovery's take on Starfleet justice is again a bit bleaker in tone for me, but their sense of justice in that sense, or maybe it's their sense of the severity of Burnham's crime that's really being displayed there, that she's getting treated more like Eddington than like a Tom Paris or someone like that. But it's certainly not that far off conceptions of punishment as a means of expediting justice or expediting justice in other parts of the galaxy. I'm thinking of Rura Penthe, or the Dominion prison run in which Worf is forced to routinely fight Jem'Hadar soldiers. There's an awful lot of
He's on an
punitive
asteroid.
imprisonment in the Milky Way galaxy.
Sure.
In fact, it seems to be a very widely spread phenomenon.
TNG has a lot of episodes like that are trials.
It begins
or
as
tribunals.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Trial for humanity, the sins of humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big one. It's a big
Yeah.
place to start. Yeah.
And I like Picard's way of beginning there, that he nails Q down to an agreement about how they're going to proceed before he'll even agree to the matter. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things that really clues you into what kind of captain this is, and that this guy isn't Captain Kirk, but he has that sort of captain's boldness or captain's sort of forthrightness in a certain sense, right?
So, Dave, had you had the burden carried by Q that day, was humanity guilty or innocent?
Q's trial is, specious at best, but
Yes.
illustrating the comparatively short time it's been that humans have been peaceful at all, in any measure, is a beautiful way to in one sense, challenge the conceptions that had founded the original series, but affirm them in respect of saying that no, the Federation is not like those things. What we have is a society that is remarkably different in a number of core respects. And that, as a question, placed as a question essentially of justice, how do we administrate just action, either between ourselves or to redress problems when they occur? That brings me back in some ways, circling back to Plato's definition that I quoted at the start, ta taheo tu praten, right? The doing of the things of oneself. And in one sense, Q would be reading that to say, just stay in your lane, humanity. Stay where you're supposed to be. Don't go out. That's partly what he's proposing to Picard and the crew of the Enterprise.
Basically.
But their reading of it is, no, we must do what it's in us to do.
Like the Vulcans were saying to the humans in Enterprise times.
Yeah, and that's a theme or a thematic that I think he's picked up in Enterprise, and I don't know if it's grounded in, Encounter at Farpoint necessarily, as opposed to other things, but it certainly manifests that same question again. It's funny. Thomas Aquinas begins his Summa Theologica with the same question. This is his masterwork, volumes and volumes and volumes long. I've got a copy of it at my house that I think is literally like 9 bookshelves long, or maybe 4 bookshelves tall or something like that. Shelves, not the 4 actual bookshelves.
Yeah, bookshelves work best when made vertical.
It's true. Yeah. He there quotes, one of the Psalms or something, saying that I have reached for that which is too high for me. But his objection is, if it were in fact too high for us, we would not even desire it.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of those. He also talks about Revelation and stuff, but the point that connects with
It's like in
this
the
thing that we're
theoretical
drawing
sense
out.
with the ant on the paper.
Yes.
It's just like, if it's outside of your realm of experience, then yes, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, like if
You
it's
wouldn't
unthinkable
know.
for you, it's not going to show up. But
Yeah.
if it is thinkable, then you can think it. And in that sense, what Picard is saying is that our horizons have broadened to the point where we can make these kinds of contacts. Sure, we're going to make mistakes. Sure, we're going to fall and fumble and foible. And, Q presses this point at a number of removes over the series. When he grants Riker membership of the Q Continuum temporarily, or when he flings them out to meet their first Borg cube, or every time he shows up almost, He's pressing this theme that, well, there's our co-pilot.
Co-pilot.
That
Our third host is here again.
Humanity is sort of too big for its britches, but I think Picard's answer is no. The pants kind of fit okay for the moment.
Yep.
And
It's like
that,
we show growth, we show desire to be better.
And part of our desire,
Explore.
as he'll say, is to explore, is to go out and learn and experience the wide cosmos.
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself is the grounds of a certain kind of justice in the Federation, right? Like building on that Vulcan principle of infinite diversity and infinite combinations. Mm-hmm. They try and practice a kind of respect both for all life, but also for all cultures. And so all concepts of justice, so long as they're not going to, I mean, in terms of membership anyway, at least in the Federation,
mm-hmm.
so long as they're not going to contravene standing Federation laws or values, right? They're not going to let in cultures that do slavery, for instance, or certain other kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, TNG tackles human rights a lot in a few different episodes, or I guess sentient rights. I guess.
Sure.
You'd probably call it.
The rights of sentient beings. Sure.
Yeah, well, as they address, of course, in Measure of the Man, like what is sentience? What kind of rights does that sentience have?
Yeah, and do we not already affirm those? So why will we not extend those to this life form? Does this life form not count as alive?
Why would we not want to?
Yeah.
Oh, yay, we get to extend that to something else. Isn't that great in our experience?
Yeah. Well, and you know, the it reminds me of the episode with the the ugly bags of mostly water.
Yeah.
Those
Home soil.
home soil. Thank you. Those little silicate entities, their existence and their livelihood, once they've met these terraformers, depends on that turn of justice, right? If they're recognized as living, then these terraformers are done.
Yeah.
They have to completely stop, and they're not going to be able to continue terraforming this world, or at least not terraforming it in the way they were planning to do up till now. And if they're not alive, then they're a natural resource, and they can kind of deal with them in a different sense. But that basic distinction of animate and inanimate, I think, is a fundamental principle of justice for the Federation.
Yeah, and then the extension of that, sentient and non-sentient.
Yeah. And from there, we sort of get to the
measurement.
Prime Directive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now here's a what if.
Okay.
And this kind of is a TNG leading into Picard kind of what if.
Oh.
What if Riker and Maddox had won their case?
Oh my gosh.
What would have happened, and what would the Picard series have looked like?
I think that incident on Mars would have happened about 30 years earlier.
That's a good guess.
But yeah, I think Brent Spiner would have been out of a job, and that would have been a sin. But
he tried to put himself out of a job in Nemesis.
that's true. But yeah, it would have been a dark day for the Federation. We would have seen a lot more robots and sort of droidy things showing up on starships, I think.
Would we have seen Picard lose his faith in Starfleet at that moment instead of during the Romulan incident?
I could have seen that, yeah. Yeah.
Where that was it. That's the last episode of TNG, because the star and captain leaves the show.
We're bothering our co-pilot, I think, now with all this talk. Well, what's interesting to me, though, is that I'm not sure that... I'm not sure they made it entirely clear what Picard's view of the synthetics was. Because he certainly seems dismayed that they're going to be shut down and disassembled.
Mm-hmm.
But he also doesn't necessarily seem to have been campaigning for their liberation either. And I can't imagine... Now, maybe we just don't see that moment in his career. Maybe that's not a fight he can fight because he's busy trying to save the Romulans. Who knows? But the length of time those synthetics had been in service looks to be about probably 8 or 10 years anyway. They're pretty integrated into the workforce and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, sure. All the infrastructure on the station based around them working it.
Yeah. But that would have meant that only shortly, like a few years after Data died, those synthetics would have been out among the stars, just galling Data's memory every day, galling the memory of that trial, you know? And I can't imagine that sitting well with Picard.
No.
I don't think he would have... Yeah,
There would have been Dodge-type androids way sooner, and there'd be a lot of them.
Yep.
It wouldn't just be her.
And whether they would be acceptable and treated in the same way as the synthetics were is a good question, right? Yeah, because you're right. Bruce Maddox would have been doing that stuff way before he was able to in the timeline that we've seen.
No, yeah, Data would have been wires pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah, so a real crime would have been committed.
Yep.
Against...
An injustice.
Yeah, an injustice against a whole species, as Data says it.
The species of one, as Picard says it.
Yeah. That's true. At that point, Lore is only, about 8 months into his just about 2-year trip floating through space.
Yes. Mr. Scott reminded us of that the other day.
Yeah. That is a slow way to travel.
That is, especially for a guy like Lore.
They were at warp when he was transported outside the ship.
I guess they can survive that. He can survive that, I guess?
How long is warp bubble held up?
Not long when it's traveling away from you at warp.
Comes to a skidding stop several light years later, into real space or into sort of normal space-time.
And so also on TNG, though, we see the Drumhead, of course, which is an unjust trial by a bit of a fanatical prosecutor.
Yeah, yeah.
And it touches on someone's human rights as far as what sort of accusations and interrogation they should be subjected to with very little evidence.
Yeah, the treatment of Simon Tarses is brutal in legal terms. It's designed to destroy him. It's designed to inveigle the ship and to imply that the flagship of the Federation is rife with sedition, treason, traitors, something that Nora Sati will not abide. And her paranoia and her desire to punish come out, I think, is probably the two strongest notes in her character in the end.
And one of the great Picard speeches in that one, though. We are all injured. That's
true. Yeah.
That's true. Like, as soon as you step on the rights of one, it's just like, it's off to the races.
And this is a sort of implicit principle of justice that seems to me to point to the fact that in the meeting with other sentient species, we have to be thrown back to first principles, because we can no longer speak of things like simply human rights, because that becomes a partial view, right? And perhaps we do speak of human rights when we're talking about humans doing things. Maybe we speak about Vulcan rights when we're talking about Vulcans doing things, but how do we speak about the rights of living beings, right?
Like the rights of a baby to go to sleep when she's very, very tired, very sleepy.
She is quoting Picard at you and says, "I will fight you."
That's actually...
the question of how we frame moral action puts me in mind of the great categorical imperative of Immanuel Kant, right? That one should always frame the maxim of your will such that it could be a universal moral law. And I think, when we're talking about home soil, for instance, that's the problem for the terraformers. They know themselves that if they can assent to the fact that these creatures or these silicate forms are alive, they know they have to treat them differently too.
Yes.
Because the whole thing they want to do is make this planet alive, Their values are in play as much as the wider values of the Federation are in play, or Picard's or anybody else on the Enterprise. But what happens, when our sense of justice has to be widened, lost in respect of another's justice. You know, puts me in mind of Kirk and McCoy's trial in Undiscovered Country.
Mm-hmm.
Their Rura Penthe sentence.
And Jonathan Archer's very similar trial.
Indeed. Or O'Brien's experience of the Cardassian justice system, where he's frankly told straight out that the point of this is to show the people justice in action, not to deliberate about whether you're guilty or not. We've already decided that.
Yeah, the Klingon justice system objective, at least where we see it, it's just about getting to the punishment.
Yeah.
It's not about so much the grand spectacle of the Cardassian method, where to make the people feel better and to see that justice is always right and always in effect, always working.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry.
Well, and the Klingons who value pain.
Yeah.
Right? Want to see
the death sentence.
The compensatory pain, right?
Yeah. They're never happy with that Rura Penthe sentence. Seems light.
Yeah, they're not thrilled about that.
No. But I find the Klingon lawyer character played by J.G. Hertzler in Enterprise one.
He's so exasperated.
I can't control my client, please. Aren't you going to say anything? Or aren't you going to cross-examine him? He says, why? He won't say anything that would help you. He's very to the point, though. He doesn't like to waste his own time.
Nope.
He realizes it's a lost cause. It's about appealing to the few times that you've helped the Klingon Empire and hope that they don't kill you, basically.
Yeah.
But then Archer ends up convincing him more of the way Klingon society has become lost, because that character says how it wasn't always that way, even recently to those times. So say, 50 years before where we see the story pick up.
Yeah.
That character, who's quite old, but says, my mother was a teacher. My father was a botanist or something like that.
And something has...
the warrior class took over.
Yeah. Yeah, very much. They became a sort of more militarized culture and come to value that particularly. Yeah, and valorize only really being a warrior.
Easiest path to glory, success.
Yeah. And I wonder whether it doesn't, whether we couldn't look back into Klingon history there and see a period of cultural or economic instability that would be coincident with that change in values, right? So there's a loss of confidence in the system as it stands, and something else comes out. I mean, you can see that happening in the world right now. There's a widespread loss of confidence in the system as it stands, and varieties of ways in which people are searching out new schemes of value, and so new practices and new productive practices in order to try and figure out some different way to be. And we know that happened on Cardassia as well.
Yeah, that's a particularly good episode, I think.
Yeah.
Or is it called Tribunal? I think it's called Tribunal.
I think so. Yeah.
His lawyer is a great character, or his advocate.
Oh, man.
Madam Archon, please. I'm 2 months from retirement.
Oh, my.
He's like, don't you ever want to win a case? He's just like, you seem great at your job. You flatter me, sir. You flatter me. Madam Archon. He's just having the worst day of his life because this one guy doesn't want to be guilty because he's not.
Yeah.
He's just like, no, you're already guilty. He's like, that's not the point. He's like, what is the point? He's like, look, I don't know how you do justice on your world, but the point of justice is to make the people feel better.
Right? And when you put it that way, it doesn't sound so insane.
No.
Except that a human experiencing that kind of justice...
the rights of the individual aren't as much of a concern for them.
Precisely. And that really confronts the human values about the rights of the individual. That guides a lot of their ethics, right? Because they're always trying to harmonize individual and group. And the Cardassians have a very different recipe for that.
Brian, this is the biggest sham trial joke of a justice system I've ever seen. Just like, good, keep up that defiance in the trial. It'll make for great television.
It's true.
It's true, didn't it?
This is our Archon Judy.
But great episode. Odo shows up as his Nestor.
And we see...
and they don't give up on him. They believe his innocence. And they, like Cisco and, Jadzia, and they don't rest until they find proof.
Yeah.
It's nice when they bring in Boone, and Madame Archon sees him. She's just like, well, this trial is over, and as we know in our courts, sometimes it's important to show leniency and compassion. As you know, our courts are often very compassionate.
Absolutely.
So we think, given Mr. O'Brien being a family man, put him into the custody of his captain. It's a branch between our two peoples.
Yeah.
Good ending to the show. But I just like this too. Like, can I say something? This is already the longest trial in Cardassian history. It's like, will people stop talking, please? This trial is over. He's guilty.
I can't believe
I
you
missed
don't shut
my
up.
dinner plans.
Oh man, yeah. It's
God, I love that episode.
The courtroom justice of the Klingons and the Cardassians is really challenging for humans in particular, but I think a lot of Federation citizens would find it challenging because there is widespread agreement in their justice systems as to certain areas of individual rights,
Yeah. The lawyer advocate characters are always great characters.
Oh, yeah.
In Undiscovered Country, we get Worf, grandfather of Worf, as their
that's true.
As their advocate.
That's true.
So even Worf's family weren't, warriors that long ago. They were in the legal system, or who knows what else.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen the Klingon culture before it was entirely warrior, just to see what it was like. It still would have been a very strong culture.
Oh, sure. And they already had an empire by that time, so they were certainly martial anyway.
Yeah.
But they weren't so single-mindedly homicidal as they do appear at several moments in the original series, TNG, DS9.
Another favorite lawyer character of mine is played by Ron Canada in the DS9 episode.
Is this Worf's trial?
Yeah, Worf's trial. What's that one called? Is it Judgment? Yeah, the Klingons want to have Worf extradited for destroying a shuttle.
Yes.
A civilian shuttle on a mission that decloaked, strangely enough, this cloaked shuttle. But before he even saw what the target was, he shot and destroyed it. So it's Sisko's job now to defend Worf against this Klingon lawyer.
Yeah.
The judge being a Vulcan admiral, who the Klingon says he has faith in, that she will, award the victory to whoever, as he sees it. He sees it as this grand battle in court here. He's like, the truth is not the truth. The truth is to be won.
Yes.
He's like, the truth is what you can convince other people it is, essentially.
Yes. Yeah, it's a matter of contestation.
Yeah, that's an interesting kind of difference. Klingons look at justice as well,
Yeah,
and truth even.
Well, everything is almost trial by combat with them, in a certain sense, right? Whereas for the Federation Starfleet types, justice is very much about either arbitration in terms of settling political or personal disputes, or it's about finding the facts of the matter and saying, nope, that's what happened, so now we work with that answer. Theirs is very much a kind of a correspondence notion of justice in that sense, right? They're saying justice appeals to the truth of the state of affairs of facts as they actually stand. And that's what we have to work with. Whereas, this Klingon lawyer is saying, my truth is a batleth, and what's yours going to be? How are we going to sort this?
You want to step onto my battlefield.
Well, and you can see there also, I think the point you made earlier about the transformation of Klingon culture has come to roost in this lawyer's heart, right? Because this lawyer wants himself to be a warrior in his own domain, right? And is insistent upon putting it in those terms. Partly to try and goad Worf, I think. Yeah. But also...
which worked.
To appease his own sense of Klingonness, which is now, at this point in their history, founded essentially in a kind of warfare as culture.
which is always that battle Worf is fighting within himself, too, that battle of culture.
Absolutely.
And the lawyer knows that, and that's what he says to Worf.
Yeah.
Were you, in that moment, were you a Klingon, or were you a Starfleet officer? Because you can't be both. And he's just like, well, I think I can, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Worf's reception of Klingon culture is also going to be very different because he's absolutely obsessed with the warrior ethos.
Mm-hmm.
But it's Worf himself who articulates in the first season episode, not Sons of Honor, it's Brothers in Blood or something like that, where the 3 Klingons come on board, one of them dies, and the 2 of them make that great jail escape, and he ends up down in Kodos is his name. I think he ends up down in engineering, and exclaims to Worf about we can set fire to the stars essentially, right? Like nothing could stand in our way if we just took this ship and went with it. And Worf essentially calls him a fool, and he says, you don't know the first thing about being a Klingon. The Klingons' battlefield is in their own soul, essentially, right? In their own spirit, and that's where the battlefield, that's where the overcoming, that's where the conquering must occur.
The Klingon heart, like as in their ritual. It's like, to him, the strongest thing in all the universe is the Klingon heart.
Yeah.
And the mastering and the taming and the directing of that is the great challenge and the great battle.
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing that makes Klingons this great, noble thing, the fact that they can do that. Kind of what the Vulcans do, but like in a different way.
That's a really interesting point. Yeah, absolutely, because they have that tremendous impetus in them. Wow. Yeah, I never really thought of that before.
The Vulcan-Klingon connection. Heard it here first on Locutors
right.
of Trek.
Hot take.
But I do not like Captain Boudet. But, I mean, we do see, again with TNG, because it had a lot of stuff with justice, but Worf is subject to a lot of different Klingon justice and injustice.
Yeah.
Based on the corruption of their system as well. Now, it's not so much their legal system as their political system, but they seem to be intertwined.
Sure. There are legal ramifications to the kind of discommendation he's put under. I think essentially he's not even really a Klingon citizen ultimately at that point.
No. Stripped of all his lands and everything, he's got nowhere to go.
Yeah. I wonder where Worf's lands were.
Yeah, right. Well, I
assume there must be some on Konos.
He talks... Well, no, who does talk about them is when Alexander comes back and visits himself. When Alexander's an older fella, played by the actor who plays in The Defector.
Yes.
He plays a lot of good characters. Yeah, he comes back and he's telling the younger Alexander what his lands are like. He's like, you can go to your uncle's place where there's a crystal clear lake where you can see the bottom and swim with, it sounds like it's got some nice land. And he's like, there's mountains. And, yeah, so sounds like a pretty nice land they had that all of a sudden was taken from his brother, on a decision Worf made. All of a sudden people are showing up and kicking Kern off the property and all his cousins and kids.
Yeah.
Yikes. Big ramifications Worf did not think about at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, seeing that he didn't know he had a brother. Well, he knew he had a brother.
He did at that point.
Never mind.
Oh, no, he knew.
That's right.
Sometimes he probably knew Kern was going to catch some shit at least, but he probably didn't expect all the lands to be stripped and everything.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. No, you're probably right. So now there are...
Well, speaking of punishments, like discommendation, you could say a bit cruel and unusual, I suppose, but when DS9 really showed us some cruel and unusual punishment with the episode Hard Time.
O'Brien must suffer. And I agree, because those are some of the best episodes of Star Trek. I really love every O'Brien Must Suffer episode. They're pretty great.
Hard Time is one of the best.
Oh, God.
Really shows
for sure.
the goodness of the character, too.
But his real humanness. The finiteness, the sort of the fragility of him as a moral and a juridical individual.
Where he has become someone who would almost strike his daughter. And the only way he can think to deal with that is he has to go kill himself now.
Yeah.
He's just he is now so far from what he was. he doesn't even know if he can get that back, and he doesn't think he can, obviously.
Yeah.
And it all because of this crazy punishment where they just make you, I mean, it's hard to even imagine it, where you just live. I mean, it's sort of like the Resican thing, I guess, where you're made to live a lot of time in a small amount of time. Period. I think he was out for they had him for 9 minutes or something, or 16 minutes.
It was 20 years or something like that he experienced.
Yeah. In a cell the entire time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the way in which they show his deconstruction as a person to the point where, he just can't take anything anymore. He's just one raw nerve by the end of it, is really brilliant. And, it's one of those episodes to me that connects with themes of justice and imprisonment and solitary confinement in our own world, much like, say, Chain of Command also connects with the plight of political prisoners or those who have been, disappeared into black sites or whatever, right? There are ways in which these things connect to our present reality without ever, really needing to ever speak of them. The shape is similar enough,
That species didn't feel they were doing anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, this is better. You don't actually have to suffer through the time. You can get your life back right where you left it off.
I'll just give you this turbo trauma. And now live with it.
But to them, they don't think they're really being that traumatic either, because they did seem to take into account how much more difficult it would probably be if you were alone. So they give you that artificial cellmate. Mm-hmm. Or maybe that's just to see how you'll react, who knows. Yeah. But it seems to be some sort of lessening of the trauma, at least in, the political sense. And it may help bind the person into the delusion as well. Yeah, right? That there's not something to interact with. You keep, what is that? What is that big phrase of a social media engagement? Mm-hmm. He stays engaged all right for 20 years. Yeah, true. But yeah, it can't be removed. They make it clear you can't remove it. They remove memories in Star Trek all the time, but these ones they make very clear can. Yeah. So I mean, no matter what happens, O'Brien's stuck with that for the rest of his life. It's tough because it took him back too. Keiko says it took him back to his days during the Cardassian War. When he didn't like himself then, and he was worried about what he was going to become then, and he's just reliving all that again. Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things I think that Deep Space Nine of all the shows spends some of the most interesting time with is trauma, and the way that we try and do justice to that, when Nog is living in a holosuite or, just the other day watched the great TNG episode again, Family. Now, we mentioned this last week, but we should probably put this in as a correction. We kept calling it Brothers during the Picard supplemental, but that's because Brothers is the very next episode, and it is about a pair of brothers, let's be honest. But it's also talking about the scenes mostly with Robert and Jean-Luc. We were talking about brothers. Yeah, not Wesley and his dad, not Worf and his family. Why didn't you ever give him prune juice? Great question. That's why Guinan's my counselor. Anyway, hey, there you go. God thinks it's ridiculous. Prune juice. Oh, you're serious. I have all the specs. Oh man, I love specs and diagrams at home. I love his parents so much. I would ship petty officer myself. When they ship very much like this, they're just absolutely delightful. I love Worf's parents. Yeah, they're great. I have all the specs and diagrams at home. Can we go see the warp core? We came here to see Worf. Oh, okay. We'll see you later. Okay. Yeah, he's great. Oh man, he would have been a great character on the ship too. Dang, I should have made him my engineer. But that was our repeated mistake last time. Yes, anyway, so you were confused, so were we. Indeed, that's right. We thought we knew what we were talking about. Yeah, that may be a running theme in this whole podcast, though. It's our charm. Oh my. So where were we? All the specs and diagrams. Oh, right, all the specs and diagrams. I actually do have all the specs and diagrams at home. So do I. Great minds. I confess, though, if there is one thing in this world that is like a paper thing that I love more than anything else, it's got to be a deck plan for spaceships that don't exist. Oh, man. Yeah. Oh, well, here's a couple things we can talk about. All right. They do some episodes on extradition.
Mm-hmm.
There's Dax, the episode Dax.
Yeah.
Where a guy wants Jadzia extradited for the crimes of Curzon, I believe.
Yes.
I believe it was Curzon, yeah.
Yep.
Which is interesting thing to think about as well. When does a crime expire?
Yeah. And that people seem to have a similar sense to humans that there's no statute of limitations on murder.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even sure that human justice wouldn't look at that and say, well, pretty sure Curzon Dax is dead.
Yeah, I think. But it's
although you
different
never
in
know.
Troll Society, you know. The
Yeah.
Dax symbiote, you could argue, which he was trying to argue, was the thing that committed the crime.
Yeah.
It's like it wasn't Curzon, it
It's
was...
an interesting point of contention, right?
Mhm.
If these are symbiotic creatures, is it possible that the part that abides, which is the symbiote, could bear peculiar legal responsibility, right?
Or the host and the symbiote trade off control a bit. There are moments
Yeah.
where it's more one than the other, or the amalgamation of both, you know.
Yeah. Well, and certainly there are moments like that, right? When Jadzia does the ritual resurfacing or whatever it is, you remember?
The Shantara?
Yeah. And her pieces come out.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Oh,
there.
Odo Curzon's the best.
oh man, Odo Curzon is so much fun. But you know the
Remember that time you took up with that girl on... it's Curzon. You remember Curzon. We're gonna go. Curzon, see you later.
yeah, I mean, there's a moment where I think the symbiote is in one sense way more in control,
Yeah.
even though locally Jadzia is way more in control. You know,
It's not always the ideal job to be the judge in some of these cases.
no,
It's pretty
no,
tough.
I can't imagine.
There's also the time they want Riker extradited for the... And there's a bit of a
Murder of-
trial.
is that Dr. Apgar?
Yeah.
And he really
his-
does not come off in a very good light at all through that story.
No, he doesn't. Because it's Riker. And it's like... They only had to slightly twist, like,
Yep.
details to... He's like, well, that's not how it happened, really.
Entirely.
No, he was mad at me, not the other way around. That's about the only difference.
Yeah,
No,
pretty
he came
much.
bursted in and was violent with me, not he came bursted in and I cold cocked him. Like that reenaction. Doctor,
Yeah,
I'm taking your wife and we're leaving. It's just like, oh God.
Riker.
Oh, Riker.
Yeah. Moments Will Riker should have really had a court martial.
But I remember, it's funny to see on the crew, well, you don't think Riker did it, do you? I think it was Troy and Picard. Maybe. Just, no, of course not. Of course not.
Yeah,
It was the episode Matter of Perspective, I think.
I think so, yeah.
I guess the only other thing I can think of off the top of my head that we should probably throw onto this episode is the justice of, or perhaps injustice, of taking away someone's right to die. As we see in the Voyager episode Death Wish, where we have very much of a trial type setting there.
That's true. It's also implicit toward the end of the first season of Picard. It's implicit they haven't allowed him to die yet.
True.
But yeah, that one in particular is very difficult. Again, Will Riker shows up.
Can't have a trial without Will Riker. What's going on
He'll
here?
take any case. Call 1-800-Riker. Yeah,
Old Iron Boots.
that's right.
Old Iron Boots Riker. Thaddeus Riker. Which is who he's named after, the T.
That's true.
And they named their child Thaddeus.
They named the child Thaddeus. Well, that's an interesting question. You know, there are some... I mean, that's a hot question today in the world.
It's
I work in clinical spaces, and the question here in Canada of what's called MAID, or medical assistance in dying, which is named a bajillion other things depending on where you are and your legal structures, is a very challenging topic. You know, the sense of having a right to...
Star Trek wasn't afraid to approach.
No.
Interesting.
And again, there's another great episode with that. Again, oddly, with Riker in it, doing exactly the wrong things most of the time, is when Worf's spine is broken.
Oh, yes.
And he wants Riker to kill him.
Which in his culture is fine.
Yeah. He's like, this is completely moral. This is what a friend does for you.
But of course he was twisting that part, and Riker reminded him, in fact, the The ritual is Alexander has to do that, not a friend.
Yeah.
As soon as a Klingon boy can hold a blade, he is a man. Is that not correct?
Yeah.
That's where another instance where you see Worf kind of idolizes Klingon culture, but he's never all in. He's never got both feet in.
He's got
The
those
Klingon
little.
pool.
He's got those little human pieces in him. You know, those Roshenko
like not subjecting
pieces.
a child to having to
Kill their own father.
father.
Yeah. Now, mind you, there are other moments. That's interesting because when Kalar dies, and then he says, "Look on this."
Look on this.
Right.
Well, that was to him. I think that was a sign of respect to Kalar and make sure her spirit makes it to Stovall Core.
Well, true, but I think him having Alexander look is a moment where he's really he's leaning Klingon.
True. Yeah, I see your point there. Yeah.
And I can only imagine how little Alexander Roshenko tried to process that. I think it's probably implicit in how we see him, how he shows up in Deep Space Nine later as a sort of not good enough Klingon. I wonder if that very early wound isn't part of how that works for him.
Mm-hmm. Oh, speaking of Klingons, I said the Worf trial episode was Judgment.
Yeah.
Judgment was the Archer trial episode.
Oh, okay.
The Worf trial was Rules of Engagement, because it's all about that.
Oh, yeah, that makes a lot
courtroom
more sense as a
battle.
title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I caught that correction before having to do it next episode.
Man, not bad. Fact checking in real time.
Wow.
Whew. You got it here, folks. Well,
I think we've covered a lot of the more justice-themed episodes of Star Trek here.
indeed. The jury may still be out if we've done an exhaustive list,
Yeah.
but the verdict is in. End transmission. Oh, well, here we are in the promenade.
Klingon restaurant.
Klingon restaurant, you think so?
Let's do it.
I suppose we did Vulcan last week.
Mm-hmm.
All right, but this time I'm definitely not getting gawked. Last time I tried to climb back up. That's...
No, but we've got a 15% chance of getting a song.
Oh, that's true.
It'd be
Maybe
great.
he'll let us play.
Maybe. We never had these kinds of problems back in the Negvar days.
That's true. That's true. We should just translate this thing into Klingon on the way over. Let's go.
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
Kapla!